One day he came over and brought someone with him. She was petite and pretty, wore jeans, had red hair that fell in line below her jaw, large, dark blue eyes, and a wide mouth that took over her face in a pleasing way when she smiled. "This is my sister," he said. She was an author, Mona Simpson. After giving my father up for adoption, his biological parents got married, had a daughter a few years later, and kept her. She and my father were soon close, kindred spirits, alike even though they'd just met. She had just published her first novel, Anywhere But Here, a book that would be on the bestseller list for many weeks and would become a movie starring Susan Sarandon and Natalie Portman. I read it when I was 12. It was brilliant. Steve and Mona looked different, tall and petite, dark and light, man and woman. You couldn't tell they were brother and sister until they both smiled and their faces opened and folded in the same way. They had similar lips and wide teeth. That's my father's sister, happened to be named Mona. Struck me as a great coincidence. What were the chances that she would have had a name that went so well with mine as to form, in combination, the name of the most famous painting in the world? They'd both been successful on their own, neither knowing of the other's existence. They shared an aesthetic sensibly, my father buying expensive lamps, carpets, and books, while Mona patrolled flea markets for vintage mercury bulbs, wooden figures, magnolia-patterned plates, glasses with a stripe of silver painted on the rim. Later, it was Mona who insisted that he rent us a nicer house than our tiny one on Melville, who insisted that he recarpet and paint the small apartment within the woodside house where he slept and I slept when I stayed with him, and that he change my bedroom from the one with the red shag rug, which required me to walk through his room to get to the bathroom, to one beside the bathroom. She who bought me a bed and later argued that he should buy my mother and me a house, she was supportive of my mother's artwork and took intense interest in the details of my life in a way that seemed to elevate them. When Mona visited, she brought with her excitement about food, jewelry, clothing. She would find the good restaurants, the places that served the best pie. She wore the same pair of earrings always, that looked like a long drip of gold on each ear, the front and back, sides hitting below her jawline. Mona had also grown up with a single father. After her father left, it seemed to me that her mother was unhinged from stories I insisted she tell me later. One Christmas, her mother had bought gifts for her boyfriend's children, but not for Mona. Once she'd made her order the steak at a restaurant when they didn't have the money for it. Mona's stories gave me a thrill, like looking down a steep cliff face, close to danger, but safe at the same time. Mona took an interest in me. She noticed and commented on my tastes, judged me wise, gave me a first gift, the Arabian Nights. Mona gazed at me as if she was particularly interested in my face. She watched me sometimes even when she was conversing with the adults. At a restaurant, I doodled on a piece of on a paper placemat, and she pronounced it great, took it, framed it, and put it up in her apartment in New York. I would grow to be the same height as Mona and also petite. I would also study English literature in college and write. One year, she wrote me long letters every week on thick paper in sepia ink. She gave me adult gifts, silver-pointed dangly earrings, a set of collected Chekhov stories in pastel-colored paperbacks, and a gold Tiffany ring with an amethyst eye. These gifts were windows into a more sophisticated world to which I'd hoped I'd belong later. She had survived her own childhood and now was successful. The gifts were proof of that. When I was a senior in high school, she would publish a new book. Before it was published, she sent me the bound galleys and asked me what I thought of the novel. If there was anything I would change. I was honored, but when I started reading, I was surprised to find characters like my father, my mother, and myself in the pages. My character was named Jane. I'd had no idea she was writing about us. Mona had collected details of my life and put them into her book, an antique Chinese enameled pillbox she bought for me, with chrysanthemums and multicolored birds painting on a blue background. Other parts were made up. It was fiction, and the combination was confusing. At first, it felt her to find my things. I felt hurt to find my things on the pages as if she'd taken the gifts back. Still, when I read Mona's books, they made me want to write my own sentences. People write about family in fictional form, she said. Fiction writers use details from life. We were at Cafe Verona, where we'd gone to talk about it. When she'd learned I was upset after reading a galleys, she flew to Palo Alto the next day from where she lived in Los Angeles to talk with me. It's just what writers do. I didn't mean to upset you. Not at all. Reading her book, I felt there would be nothing left for me to write about. I felt emptied out. Jane didn't like sushi because it felt like a tongue on her tongue. The details she described made me disconsolate, as if, having described them so well, they belonged to her now, not to me. Why didn't you tell me right after you read it, she asked. I would have changed it, or waited, or even not published it at all. But at 18, the idea that I could have told her what to do with her work had not felt possible. Now, the book was almost on the shelves. Also, after reading half the book, I'd stopped. I didn't even know what happened with my character in the end. You haven't finished, she asked. You'll like it. What happens to Jane? Maybe, I said. Perhaps. You'll mention in my book, in your book someday, she said, surprising me with the idea that one book might refer to another, like Russian dolls, and that there might be room for more than one book about the same people and the same time. In the end, Jane is wearing a school uniform, and she rushes into a classroom with other children. She finally belongs. Ron thought my private school was elitist and lacked academic rigor, and he managed to convince my mother too. So we moved house in order to be in the Palo Alto school district so I could attend public school. Our new place, an apartment in the back of another house, was less than half the size of the small house we'd moved from, but with just as many rooms. It was like a playhouse. The wooden floor, newly sanded and varnished for our arrival, yellow as hay, shone like it was wet. Before this, we'd lived on a series of old wall-to-wall carpets, and my mother's joy about this floor surprised me. She resembled the tubular bed in my new room. One night, soon after we moved in, she rented Desperately Seeking Susan to watch on our new television. I wasn't allowed to watch it. Before this, we hadn't owned a television. After she'd put me to bed, I'd turn myself so my head was where my feet usually were, careful not to jostle the singing springs. From there, I could open the door a crack and see the screen over the back of the couch. In the movie, a woman wore tattered black clothing, her hair in spikes, necklaces layered. The more I watched, the more I knew I wanted to look like this woman. My mother spun around and caught me watching. I thought so, she said. Get to sleep. She came over and shut the door. A few days later, I found a picture in my magazine. It might have been an ad for Guess or Jordache jeans, in which a woman with short, tasseled hair, wet maybe, was leaping. She flew above the dark asphalt, toes pointed, perfect splits in the air. She wore a t-shirt and stone-washed the jeans. I wanted to be that girl too. Ron came over while my mother and I were standing in the kitchen. The kitchen alcove was straight across from the front door. When he stepped in, he lifted his camera to his eye. "Don't move," he said, clicking. "This is really good." We didn't own a camera. At first, the shots were candid, but now he wanted us to pose. Click, click, click. I would feel my smile hardening. In his interactions with me and my mother, he often insisted too much. My mother, he said, went too far, as if only by extreme repetition would he be noticed. I knew Ron was kind. He bought us matching gold necklaces, hers wider and thicker than mine, made of 2 rows of jointed segments that met like herringbone. It was only because he went on too long and didn't listen that we became infuriated and pushed him away. Now, in the kitchen, it was my mother and me against his frantic urgency. We gave him insolent looks. He turned on the flash. "Ron, enough," my mother said. "We're done, okay?" My mother ran into the bathroom. I ducked behind the wall. "Guys, come back," he said. "Let's take just a few more." When Ron didn't stay over, I slept with my mother in her bed, which I preferred sleeping alone. "Why don't you leave him?" I asked her the next day. "I just might," she said. Ron brought over the developed photographs in a paper envelope. As soon as he stepped inside, my mother grabbed the envelope out of his hand and ran to the couch and started looking through the stack. I tried to get at the pictures, and so did he, but her back was curved against us as she flipped through them, yanking out the photos she didn't like and hiding them in a pile beneath her leg. She had long believed that the essential perspective of the photographer was captured in his or her photographs. Flattering or interesting pictures would mean that Ron noticed her beauty and even her soul. Ugly pictures would reveal that he did not see, appreciate, or love her. "Let me see," I said, reaching around her, trying to grab them. But it was too late. She ripped the photographs beneath her leg in half. She turned and shrugged, tilted her head, lifted her eyebrows, acknowledging our anger and frustration, but smug, the way she always was when she ripped up photographs of herself. It enraged me when she did this. I became more critical of her. I noticed the way she walked with her toes pointing in, and how her pinky toes formed yellow calluses, sharp as blades, that ran vertically along the bottom pad where the toes had been flattened in shoes. She added flakes of brewer's yeast to her salads, and they smelled of dusty rooms. Her cakes collapsed with fault lines because she was too impatient to let them cool. Once I had loved the way the tip of her nose bobbed up and down when she chewed, and sat in her lap to be closer to the sound, like a blade through tall grasses. But now both her nose and her chewing seemed strange and wrong. All those factors, I believed, were why she was only able to date someone like Ron, not my father. I came to believe it was her fault. She wasn't beautiful enough, and was therefore unloved, unlovable, and might make me so too.